Our good buddy, Chris Long, inside the NFL analyst and former NFL defensive end, won a Super Bowl. You won a couple of Super Bowls, didn't you? Did you win the Patriots and Eagles?
Got a little lucky at the end there, Dan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are the rings?
It's good to see you. The rings are in a safe. You know, the rings are they're only for team events, like NFL honors, that sort of thing. I'm the type that would lose my Super Bowl ring, so they stay in the safe.
This is what I proposed years ago, that we should have a ring and then inside the ring, like you can wear it almost like a class ring from high school.
Yeah.
So it's medium size. It's not gaudy, but it still represents something you did with your team. Then you can bring out the show ring if you want to, but this gives you hey, there's my high school graduation ring.
I kind of like that. I'd like to have 4 rings. Feel like Robert Ory or one of these guys that stacked a bunch of them up. But yeah, I got lucky there at the end, Dan. It was a good little run.
Good to talk to you again. What's it like being on a bad team?
Wow. The hard-hitting questions right off the bat. It's so funny, Dan. I was watching, it's not funny, not for the people of Chicago, but I was watching the Bears, and, that game against Tampa, I feel like I've been in that game 100 times in 8 years in St. Louis. I mean, 1-15, 2-14. The height of our run there was 7-9. And that Chicago team feels a lot like teams that I was on. When you gather a little bit of hope, you go through camp, and camp is tough because you got these old vets, and especially when I got in the league, it was the old CBA. So you had a bunch of old guys who had seen it all. They were a little bit hardened, and they were going to be honest with you about how the team looked. Today, I think in camp, it's all feel good. Everybody's got hope. It's a bunch of young players. You don't know in camp, if you've only been in for like 4 years, if your team sucks. And back in the day, I think we had a pretty good pulse on that. So it was like a mind game, as the years went on, of how can I trick myself into believing that we have a shot to do this. And the hardest part is, it's not like the NBA. It's not like the MLB when you're gonna suck. You get on the team plane, you go to dinner, you have fun on the road. I'm not saying these guys are having fun when they're winning 20 games in the NBA, but it's a lot easier than an NFL player who's going to put his body on the line every Sunday, and knowing that, if you turn on your TV and you're an Arizona Cardinal, you're drafting Caleb Williams, according to guys like myself and everybody else. And sometimes I think we make it a little bit too simple when it comes to punting on a season. So it can be really hard. Every Sunday, it's like taking the field and knowing we're probably going to lose, but you got to go out there and kind of, I don't know, you hope to be the guy that jumps off the tape. If anybody's watching, because nobody's watching on TV, but somebody's going to be watching next week in the All-22. If anybody's watching, if anybody cares, I'm going to be the guy that jumps off the tape.
What did you see in the Minka Fitzpatrick hit on Nick Chubb?
So at first, Dan, because it's all slow motion and I heard your take that, they should have showed it. That stuff doesn't bother me because, listen, it's happened to my friends. I've seen it in person. It's hard to make me squeamish, but they do show the slow motion. They don't go full speed. The angle was kind of from the right sideline. So you don't see Minka's approach at full speed. And initially, even as a defensive player who albeit saw the game from the front and never had to make those plays. Okay. I was like, hey man, people are saying Minka has a track record. He's just doing it. He's going for it. He's just going low, and he's got to know that linebacker's there. But as I slept on it and I woke up to do Inside the NFL, and Ryan Clark was there, and I was reading through his Twitter, and he's going back and forth with Nate Burleson. I'm kind of like, do I disagree with the host here? Me and Ryan didn't talk about it, but I just got on all 22 and took a closer look, and I do not think it was dirty. And the thing that, because for you to prove that something's dirty, it has to be with malicious intent to injure. You can say that it's an imperfect situation for running backs in the NFL. We talk about this all the time. I mean, it's a tough job, and this is why. You can say that it's tough for defenders. They've legislated where you can hit a guy, the whole thing. But I think the most compelling argument for me is I'm texting guys and calling guys that I play with on the back end who are the furthest thing from dirty players, people that I respect greatly. And they're like, listen, man, not dirty at all. It's the 4-yard line. We got to get this guy down. He's not seeing that backer who almost simultaneously jumps on Chubb's back. I saw comparisons to a defensive lineman being high load. Not true. I mean, a defensive lineman being high load in today's game is It's vindictive. That's the only way you high-low somebody. I mean, it's so easy to hurt somebody doing that. Even back in my dad's day, he used to tell me about, hey, when the 290-pound guards were getting thrown around by He-Man out there and they were tired of Howie Long, they would high-low him, and it was a dirtbag thing to do. Now, the difference is this: when a running back is churning his feet, statistically speaking, it's really hard to hit that guy at the right time and injure him, even if you were trying, because his feet are up and down. If you're anchoring in a 4 technique, both your feet are planted, you're stationary, and there's no expectation of that happening. Guys do this all the time. I watched the tape. 23 Kazee for the Steelers made a play at the beginning of the fourth quarter, early in the game. It happened a couple times in that game alone. So I'm just not comfortable calling a guy dirty. That's a heavy accusation. I've seen dirty plays. You want to talk about dirty? Go back to the college football landscape last week. It's not worth death threats. I think that thing was ridiculous. I think I heard y'all talking about Deion. I think he's just been brilliant at the podium, the voice of reason, the adult in the room. But this was not a dirty play on Monday night, in my opinion. And it took me a second, I'll admit. And today, I think the landscape is when you get online, you get on X, you get on the X machine, you're so afraid to step out and say, hey, guys, I don't see it that way, because, the compounding effect of everybody's opinion is the people who know will be afraid to be called that same thing, and it's not worth them to speak up. And I learned that in reaching out to a few DBs and a wide receiver who said the same thing.
We're talking to Chris Long inside the NFL. The host is Ryan Clark. Channing Crowder's there, Jay Cutler, Ocho Cinco, every Tuesday at 8 Eastern on the CW. And stream the episode the next day on CWTV.com and the CW app. Is there anybody that you still harbor a grudge against that you played against?
Not really. I was talking about this the other day. There was a guy named Anthony Davis in San Francisco, and we outwardly didn't like each other. He was younger. I got the best of him a few times, and I'm sure somewhere he's sitting there with his feet kicked up, like, you bringing this up again? I'm good. It was really hard for me. Breno Giacomini, a guy who played in that Tom Cable offense in Seattle, and it was so physical, and he'd hit you late and he'd dump you, and that group would do borderline dirty stuff. But for the most part, when I got off the field and I was done with it. It takes a lot to harbor a grudge like that. My grudge is more against teams that we just couldn't seem to beat, and I try not to let it affect my analysis. And I think I've done a pretty good job of it, because I picked the San Francisco 49ers to be in the Super Bowl. I've been complimentary of the Seahawks. The thing that I've had the hardest time with, Dan, and maybe you could help me out, is fan bases are extremely sensitive about their teams, and they think it's personal. And, I'll be breaking down the Falcons, and I'll be like, hey, they're a good team. Desmond Ridder has to catch up. And I got 100 Falcons fans in my mentions like, you're a hater. You hate us. I don't hate you. I'm not a hateful guy.
Why do you read them? Why do you read them?
Because we're a growing podcast. So at this point, you're Dan Patrick. You don't need to read your comments. You don't need feedback. Your show's been going for a long time.
Don't let them change your opinion. And if
they don't. Desmond Ridder needs to catch up. I'm saying it again on the Dan Patrick show. But I like to read because, sometimes the comments are actually constructive. They're like, we like this. We need timestamps on the YouTube video. Maybe more of this. Why didn't you talk about the Cardinals today? Well,
why don't you have somebody who goes through? Have your
That's
mom
a good idea.
Or your wife go through.
No.
And no, you don't want your wife.
No.
But have somebody who goes through it and then filters and just says, hey, here's the thing. This is what the Danettes do.
Congratulations, Matt, in the back of the room, one of our producers here. I don't have a cool name for him like the Danettes.
Yeah.
But Matt, you get to go through all the YouTube mentions and aggregate the opinions.
Yeah. There you go. Matt,
congratulations.
Matt just got promoted. What's your
Dan Patrick?
What's your story that you're going to tell your kids about Tom Brady?
A few. I think, first and foremost, I got a lot of respect for the guy. I'm not just saying that. I don't have to say that.
Don't give us any cheesy stuff.
I've been critical of him when he's, ninja kicked defensive backs after interceptions. Like, I don't know if it's a New England quarterback thing with Mac Jones and him where they're a little bit. But I think Tom Brady was one of the nicest, most down-to-earth teammates I had. And I truly think he's a good person. He has a good heart. And when I got into New England, somebody's a leader on a team like that. It can be really good or it can be really disruptive because your good players, they set the tone. And if it's not a great guy, that can kind of poison a locker room, even if you don't realize it. When I walked into the building, I'd played 9 years on a lot of bad teams, had a good run, but I didn't expect that Tom Brady knew much about me. And, of course, I walk in, he's passing me in the hallway. We're on the way out to walk through, and I say, Tom, nice to meet you. I'm Chris, appreciate you. And he goes, and he's actually there. I was coming up to introduce myself, Chris. I just wanted to welcome you here. I've enjoyed watching you play. We're happy to have you. And I saw him repeat that interaction with 4 or 5 guys that were new, kind of veteran additions in that locker room. I saw him treat the janitor the same way that he'd treat, Bill. I saw him treat the guy in the parking lot the same way that he would treat Josh McDaniels. I really do believe you can judge somebody on how they treat the person in the building who you need the least from. And I saw him on many occasions do that. And I also saw him turn into hell on wheels on the sideline, which you need to be sometimes. And I think some people see him slamming a tablet and they want to point the finger at him and say, bad teammate or whatever. That's leadership sometimes. And you can say it's not the packaging you like, or he looks like a baby sometimes, but sometimes you got to be that guy. And I thought he possessed the ability to do both, be that pick you up guy, have fun, but also the guy who could jump down your throat and strike the fear of God and the wide receivers.
But then you have Belichick. Doesn't say too much.
Nah.
Chris, that's good to see you.
Yeah.
Good game.
I love Bill. I love Bill, Dad. I can't help but love Bill.
How do you love Bill? What's there to love?
A lot. The guy's got hobbies that are like quirky. He likes like boats and lacrosse, and like he likes his dog. It's just kind of like disarming that the dude who you thought for a long time was maybe Darth Vader has this kind of soft side. And if you get Bill to laugh, I mean, I used to go through the hall and just try to make Bill laugh, not in a kissing up way, but I just wanted to see him smile. Cause when he just breaks character for a second, that upper lip moves just a little bit. And you're like, hey, we did it today. We used to love, we used to love that. But I love Bill because he was honest, and so many coaches in the NFL will not shoot you straight. Even if they're going to fire you in 2 weeks, they'll be afraid to tell you that to your face in their office. I had 2 coaches like that. I remember when I was unhealthy at the end of my career in St. Louis, Greg Williams pulled me in his office and I was like, hey, I want to be out there on 3rd down. And I'm thinking in my head like a competitor. And he's like, you're not good enough right now. You're not healthy enough. I love you, but that's a disservice to the other guys. And it took hearing the honesty, and the same thing with Bill, being honest with me at different turns in the road. And another thing I love about Bill is this, Dan, it's a little bit off the beaten path for a fan, but when we travel as NFL players, whether you're a 10-year vet, a 14-year vet, a rookie, chances are these coaches are going to put you back in coach, ironically. And the coaches, the little 5'10" guys, well, I don't want to say 5'10", maybe the 5'7" guys, some of the quality control guys, their little feet are kicking, above the ground. They don't need all that leg room. And they're up there watching all 22, having a soda. And we're in the back, and we just played 60 plays, and I'm cramped between Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. Okay. But when we were in New England, Bill put all the guys that he could up in the front. Bill sat and coached. So, you think about, that's just a little anecdote about the guy. I loved his honesty. I loved the fact that he respected his players. And I've texted him since, and you'd think I was just there for a year, played a role, left in free agency. Maybe he'd be happy about that, or maybe he'd hold a grudge. But he's actually, we've talked from time to time. And one time I complimented him on that very travel deal. And I got a text out of the blue from Bill that was like, I appreciate you commending our travel, Chris. And it just made my day. I'm a big Bill fan. And you can say the personnel decisions haven't been great, but I really think there's a good football team in there. And I would almost go as far as saying that's the best 0-2 team in the league, if that's a distinction you want to own.
Good luck with Inside the NFL. My best to the family as always, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Great to see you.
That's Chris Long, Inside the NFL analyst, and you can watch every Tuesday at 8 Eastern on the CW. Stream the episode the next day on CWTV.com and the CW app.